When the grid goes down, the only power is going to be information. Let's get to it. Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So I hope everybody's staying warm out there. It looks like we got a warm front coming in to hopefully alleviate some of the suffering that's going on down south for people who are not adept and acclimated, and of course don't have a winterized power grid to deal with those sorts of conditions. It's tragic that so many people have had to suffer this past 18 months with all of these different catastrophes we've been facing, and I don't think that that's a good thing for a minute, obviously, but I will say that it's probably best that we had some testing of the system before the big one hits. Because if there ever was a big prolonged disaster situation now, I do think that more people are going to take preparedness seriously. Unfortunately, that had to come at the cost of many lives lost for a multitude of reasons over the past 18 months. But I do think that society is now a bit more primed for a big, wide-scale SHTF situation, and that's a good thing. So today I want to talk about, we're going to do a lighter video, okay? Now, oftentimes I've talked about the importance of having digital information, okay? Having books on your Kindle or your apps, your smartphone apps. I did that video. It got absolutely no love from the algorithm whatsoever, so make sure you go and check it out. Give it a thumbs up if you will. And I've also talked about storing information on memory cards, because for something like this, you know, this is a 256 gigabyte memory card. You could fit hundreds of thousands of documents and books on this little tiny card. Now the problem is, if I smash this with a hammer, that's the end of it, okay? But if I hit this with a hammer, if I drop this from an airplane, there's still going to be something there that I can salvage. So while I do believe in the technological supremacy of storing information on these little SD cards or even portable solid state hard drives, I do think that at the end of the day, it's still nice to have a book, because you never know, okay? Your fancy little electronics right here, if there is the dreaded one-off EMP or solar flare scenario and all of the electronics get fried somehow, then you're going to be left without a device to process all those documents on. Now, what I won't recommend you do is go on one of the many file sharing sites out there and download complete compendiums of preparedness information that other people have compiled. I would certainly not suggest you do anything illegal like that, okay? Because that would be totally illegal to use those file sharing sites for things of that nature. You never want to do that, because the fact is you can't know everything, and if you're like me, you partied way too much when you're younger, your memory is fried, and you're not that smart. So that's the reason why we have books. I'm just going to talk about some book recommendations that I have for you today. So this one's by John Seymour. This is a very popular book within the homesteading community. This is just a very comprehensive book that every person who is wanting to go off grid and is considering, you know, one of these situations that we talk about where we'd have to sustain ourselves and go back to the old ways, this is a book you should have. You know, it shows you all the different types of old tools that you might need. Reading a book like this is going to give you a sense of what the rural agrarian lifestyle would be like if we were throwing back 100 years or so, okay? And it just details everything, and it does it very nicely. Every prepper should have a book like this within their arsenal. Now, a lot of these books I'm showing you today are not necessarily best in their class, but hopefully they give you some ideas as to what you can add to your preparedness library. So this book is called The Boreal Herbal, Wild Food and Medicine Plants of the North. And this is just going to give you an excellent breakdown, lots of illustrations if your plant identification apps fail you, what's good out there to eat and use for medicinal purposes. There's no way in hell I could know this all. There's certain people who probably do know it much better than this book. I'm not one of them, so I need that sort of help. Up next is Food Storage for Self-Sufficiency and Survival. This was written by Angela Pasquette. She's a woman that I've interviewed on the channel before in the female preparedness series that I did. And excellent book. Lots of information in this book if you want to know just the basics of food storage, what food is going to last for different periods of time and how to store it, absolutely you need this book. Up next is a book on vegetable gardening. Just to show you, when you should plant things, how you should grow them, when you should harvest them, what sort of conditions you should grow them in, where you should grow it. Book on how to dehydrate food, even though I do have a Harvest Right freeze dryer. If I ever had to dehydrate food, if there was, a limited power supply and I couldn't use the freeze dryer, then this would definitely come in handy. So we have this book, which is a Lone Pine Compendium of Edible and Medicinal Plants of Canada, and I really like the way this one is laid out. It really provides some nice images, and it's really encyclopedic in the way it outlines the information. Just make sure if you do get a wild edibles book that it's one which is tailored towards the region that you live in. No sense in getting a book on edible plants in Canada when you live down in Texas. This book is called A Field Guide to Trees of North America. This book is going to help you identify different types of trees and give you some insight as to what those trees can be used for, and of course where they're going to grow, where you're going to find them. Now, this is something I don't know anything about, but if push came to shove, I would probably have to learn pretty fast. I don't know a whole lot about blacksmithing, but if push came to shove and all I had was a bunch of old pieces of scrap metal to work with, then I would have to figure it out. I would have to make some tools, just like they did in the old days, okay? And I'm not saying this is necessarily the best book on this topic. There's no color illustrations in this book. It's largely reference material, like a lot of the stuff I'm talking about here. So no, I have not read this book in its entirety yet. I certainly have skimmed it. I do think that this is a part of my preparedness library that I'm going to have to expand out, because I don't think this book is going to be sufficient. This might be good if you've already had some exposure to blacksmithing, but it's a start. This is another one here. I'm still waiting for my Cybertruck to come in the mail. That's probably going to take a few years. So in the meantime, we got auto repair for dummies. Now, unless you were, raised in a mechanic type family and you helped your dad work on cars since you were a kid, which is something I never did, you need a book like this, okay? This just goes over the basic mechanics of how a vehicle works. And if you know how a vehicle works, then it's much easier to diagnose and troubleshoot when something goes wrong. And of course, if the grid's down, you're going to be on your own or, left to people in your community to deal with that sort of thing. Now, up next is one of the best, hands down, the best medical book that every single prepper should own. Unfortunately, this is not available right now in a digital format. I'm not sure why, but this is the Survival Medicine Handbook written by Dr. Joe and Jamie Alton. This is what you use if help is not coming. A lot of first aid books, this one here, okay, this is going to be good while the grid is up to keep people alive until help can come. But what if help is not coming? Okay, that's when you need to resort to books like this one here. This is the Outdoor Emergency Medical Handbook, and this is, of course, the Survival Medicine Handbook. I would recommend both of these books be in your library. Put them near a first aid kit, but definitely with something like this is something you want to read beforehand. Whereas you still want something like this, because this is going to be set up so that you could use it in case of an emergency. It's much easier to navigate, I will say. You definitely want to take a first aid course to complement all of this stuff in the very least. And even then, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be prepared to deal with every situation, but you'll do so to the best of your capability. Now, up next is a book on knots. Now, there's plenty of knot tying apps that I've went over, which are far better than this because they give you 3D perspectives and animations of the knots actually being tied. But this book is really good. Like, it's just illustrations for me, because I'm an idiot. I need those illustrations, okay? If you're trying to explain to me how to tie a knot with black and white images, it's just not going to go over too well. So this book, The Complete Visual Guide to Tying Over 100 Knots, would absolutely recommend that book in a heartbeat. Up next is the Peterson Field Guide to Freshwater Fishes. Now, I'm not an expert fisherman. I've done some fishing, obviously, but it's good to know your species of fish and whether or not they're poisonous, whether or not they're edible, where you're going to find those fish. This book is going to tell you all of that. It's going to tell you where you're going to find different types of species of fish. So you definitely want to get this. And this one, of course, is freshwater. So if you live near the ocean, then you might have to look for a different type of book. This is just an essential fishing handbook. Okay, if you're a novice to fishing, you're going to want something like this. And I really love these field and stream books. They have amazing illustrations and they explain things very simply. In this day and age, when you can get a book with nice graphics and illustrations like that, why not? You know, I mean, it's just going to help you to have that visual aid. Some people don't need that, especially if you're more advanced. Myself personally, I really like the field and stream books. In that same vein of book, we have the Outdoor Life book series. We actually sell the Outdoor Life book series at CanadianPreparedness.com. So we have Outdoor Survival Hacks. We have the Prepare for Anything Survival Manual. We have the Total Gun Manual. And we have the Total Outdoorsman Manual. And this is just scratching the surface of these types of guides. There's the Bushcraft Survival Manual, the Ultimate Survival Manual. And in the same vein, they all have these beautiful illustrations, very easy to follow. These are just excellent gifts, bathroom readers for, unless you're George Costanza, right? You're in the bookstore. These are just excellent gifts for aspiring survivalists and great dip-in readers, you know, with hundreds of different tips and tricks on various survival related stuff. So there's no shame in going with the outdoor life stuff. It can really take what could be a dry topic and make it fun to learn. Now, this is probably one of the best selling books for preppers and survivalists out there, and it's the SAS Survival Handbook by John Lofty Wiseman. Is it the best one on the market nowadays? Honestly, I would say that a lot of these books definitely rival it, especially if you have the complete guide in terms of the easiness to follow. But there's a lot of universal skills and tricks which are going to be applicable across, you know, just a wide array of different environments. So if you want one book to rule them all, then, you know, get this book. This should be one of the first books you probably buy. But as is the case with all of this reference material, you can't just expect that you're going to crack this book open in times of crisis and be able to follow it point by point. These are skills that you're going to want to practice. But if you're in a survival predicament, you only have one book that you can carry, this might not be a bad idea. And of course, you can buy this in a digital version. Most of these you can get for Kindle, and I'm sure some of them you could even get for Audible. But listening to reference material on Audible, probably not too fun, okay? Just simple books like this, The Complete Guide to Hunting, Basic Techniques for Guns and Bow Hunters. Books like this are going to get you familiar with what you can expect when you do embark on your hunting journey. If you've never hunted before, what you're going to need. Every hunting situation is going to be unique, you know, largely based around the availability of fauna in your region, and of course the hunting laws of your region, but lots of really solid, universally applicable information in a book like that. This book here, Mammals of North America, this is just something to familiarize yourself with if you want to know what sorts of animals are out there, the different types of tracks. So this would be useful if you are doing tracking. Now, I also have the Complete Tracker book, which gives you tips on how to, you know, spot sign and follow different tracks of animals and just identify, you know, if something's a bear or if it's just a footprint of somebody. You know, I'm sure we've all made that mistake walking through the woods thinking something's a bear and it's really a freaking horse hoof or something. In the same vein, for hunting, we have Hunting for Food, Guide to Harvesting, Field Dressing, and Cooking Wild Game. So once you know all the basics of hunting, you're going to want to know how to process that game in the field so that you can bring it home and you don't make some mistakes out there, which are going to be very costly. Then, of course, when you get home, you have the ultimate guide to home butchering, how to prepare any animal or bird for the table or for the freezer. And then, of course, after that, you have the complete book of butchering, curing, smoking, and sausage making. So what do you do with the meat after it's butchered? So those are some of the ideas I have for you. Let me know if you have any book recommendations in the comment section below. I'm really interested in expanding my physical preparedness library, and I would like to hear what sort of recommendations you have. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this video, and the best way to support this channel is to give it a thumbs up and comment down in the comment section below. And by all means, please share if you found the information useful. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves. Canadian Prepper out. The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com. Your one-stop shop for premium, high-quality, brand-name products that have been tried and tested by myself and other YouTube gear reviewers. My subscribers save 10% off by using the coupon code SURVIVALPREPPER. All one word in all caps.